Hello, beautiful. This is OKeba Anahata Ra. I hope that you are well. I hope that you're smiling and that you're happy and not feeling what I am going to talk about today, which is anger. I want to speak about anger, and this can be a common topic in psychological circles, but I want to speak about this from a multi-leveled or multi-dimensional level. So I want to speak first. This first video is going to be about this is going to be kind of a mini series, okay? And so this first video is going to be about the spiritual slash religious implications of anger and how it's spoken about and how we what we see in religious or spiritual circles in speaking about anger. And the next one will be about more of the medical aspect of it, and then we'll get into more of the solutions and managing anger. Okay, um, so let's start with that. Let's talk about what anger is. What is anger actually? And we're going to look at it. I do want to give a nice definition. So we have a working definition. And this is from the American Psychological Association. I will be looking down a little bit because I'm looking at some of my notes. I don't want to forget anything. How they define anger is an emotion characterized by antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong. Okay. It's also stated that anger in and of itself is not a bad thing, right? It's all in how you use the anger. Anger can be useful in that anger can be sometimes the emotion that propels us to find solutions to a problem, some solutions to an issue, to an ongoing issue, right? The problem with anger, though, is that when it festers, when we don't find a solution, when we don't move to a solution, or when we're not even sure what it is that is triggering us to be in this angered emotional state. And so we can sometimes carry emotion, ongoing emotion. Like you may see people who, and hopefully this is not you, but who can go from 0 to 10 in 10 seconds flat, depending on the topic. They go from 0 to 10. And the truth is, when we say things like, they like, oh, this person goes from 0 to 10 in like 10 seconds, like you talk about this or whatever, and I've had topics like that, and I've had to work through some of those things myself, and I'm still working on some of those things, and we learn some strategies to deal with that, which I'll talk to you about that later. But what that means, usually, if a person is going from 0 to 10 in just a few seconds flat, usually that person wasn't at 10. Usually they may have been at a 5, 6, or 7, and they're walking around with anger that's already still on them and festering, unresolved issues, problems, hurt, pain, things that they are carrying around with them. And so they're easily triggered by other topics, conversations, even people or places that may remind them of something that's a trigger for them. And so this is where the problem comes in. It's a problem when we are triggered quickly, when we go to anger very quickly, and when we have ongoing anger, which that leads to many of the physical ailments, the mental and physical ailments in the body, which we'll talk about in a later video. But this one, I want to talk about it from a religious and spiritual perspective. Okay, now let me just say, I'm going to speak about the Bible, and I'm going to speak about one of the apocryphal texts. My position on it is that these are religious and spiritual books. They have, like the Bible in particular, there's a long history there. It's been written and rewritten, and it actually has information that comes from various cultures. This is not one people's book written for them about them. It was actually taken. A lot of the information in there and the stories were taken from multiple groups of people. You have from Chem, from Babylonians, and various groups of people have contributed to this, not necessarily knowingly, but the writers took from those various places, and the people who wrote in the books studied in these places, and that's where a lot of the information knowledge came from. And so there's mythology in there, there's history in there, there's of course poetry and proverbs that you can learn from. There are teachings in there that are very useful and edifying for you. Okay, and so I'm using the book from that perspective, and so that's what we want to glean in understanding. Many cultures, most cultures around the world, have books of mythology, and they have various books of the like that I've mentioned. And these are various histories of the people, or it tells stories about how certain practices in their people came about. That's one of the things we were learning when I was homeschooling my son with about the Chinese culture. They have some of their literature and their mythologies will talk about certain people who taught them their medicinal practices, etc., etc. That was just an example. Okay, so let's go into it further. Here are some scriptures. Here's some places from the Bible where it talks about anger. We have in Proverbs 15:18, it says, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets contention. Right? So when you're angry, when you have a festering anger, you cause contention. And it's hard to have peace when a person is holding on to a lot of anger because they're stirred up easily. And oftentimes it's very difficult to get them to come to peaceful terms with other people around them. There's a lot of contention, and that's held up with anger. Ephesians 4:26 says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. This again is speaking against holding on to that anger and allowing it to just fester and not putting strategies in place to deal with it, to deal with the pain, to deal with those emotions. All right. And we're going to go into further why this becomes problematic. There is no peace for the wicked. I want to talk something about that wicked. Let me move on over to this right here. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Wrath is extreme anger, right? And violence with anger. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. That was Psalms 37:8. Now when it talks about it tends to evil, this is the link that I want to make with anger, and how anger often is a pathway towards evil and wicked and lawless behavior. Lawless behavior. We hear that word lawless. Oftentimes people will refer to the man of lawlessness coming before, that great day of the glorious one, right? The man of lawlessness. Well, what is this talking about? What is a law? That's in 2 Thessalonians, by the way. The man of lawlessness. This is a being who doesn't follow the laws of God, the laws of man. This being goes against all of that. Everything has a place. The birds, they fly in the air. They build nests. They follow order. Fish swim and they do what fish do. Even the blades of grass do what it does, the wind does. And the reason why I'm speaking about it to that level, because if you look at one of the apocryphal texts, which I'm going to refer to, which is the book of Enoch, it talks about that and how everything has like a spirit and an angel over it, even the blades of grass, and how everything does what it's supposed to do. This is following the law, right? Ma'at. Following the law. So where we have lawlessness, we have beings not doing what they were designed to do or designated to do, right? And we hear a mentioning of the lawlessness beings or the lawless beings in this book of Enoch. And we're first introduced where they come from in the chapter 6 and 7, where it talks about these 200 fallen angels that come to the earth. And these 200 fallen angels come to the earth because they want to, they see human women and they lust after them, and they have children with those women. And the children who are born, they're giants. Some of them are these powerful beings, and some of them are these just big, powerful, evil creatures that come and roam the earth. And these creatures start to terrorize humanity. So much to the point where humans are crying out like, please help, help, help. Now, side note, my understanding of this is that this is where a lot of these mythologies come from. These stories that we hear about, some of the fairies and giants and all of that stuff, that some of these things come from, perhaps if this was something real, or it's somehow tied into these different creatures or this story or these stories that exist. You find stories like this all over the world. I don't find that to be a coincidence, okay? Anyway, we're introduced to these particular beings, and the humans are crying out to the earth. And there's a whole story about the angels are saying, okay, well, what do we do? So that's where the flood comes in, and it destroys most of them. But then many of them, and you have another more of them that are also killed in battle, in their own battles of carnage, killing off each other, right? And so they are deceased, but their spirit remains in the earth. And it talks about their spirit remaining in the earth. We find that in chapter 15, and they are referred to as evil spirits in the earth. Okay, now there is reference to those particular beings and having sex with human women, and the treachery and everything that came about from that in the book of Genesis. You find that in Genesis 6, 4 and 5 mostly, where it talks about that. So that is a cross reference. It's just the book of Enoch gives more detail as to what the book of Genesis was talking about when it talks about, and there were giants in the earth in those days. Okay, so now those evil spirits, they still have interaction with human beings on the earth. And being that they were wrathful beings, they were angry beings, powerful but low entity type being. When I say low, I mean of a negative energy that they carry. They are drawn to that. They're drawn to things like anger. They're drawn to low vibration, things like lust. They're drawn, all of those things that have been considered sins and deadly sins. Those low beings are drawn to those energies. So when you're vibrating on that energy, when you're surrounded by that energy, when you're conjuring up those energies of anger, lust, malice, jealousy, violence, what are some of the other ones that we know as low in energy? This video is talking about anger, so I'm gonna pretty much stay focused on the anger part. All of those things invite those energies in, and they can take possession of you. One of the things that we're going to talk about in another video is how in the human brain you have a part of the human brain called the amygdala. I'm not saying it right. Amygdala, that supersedes the conscious mind, the logical thinking of the brain, and it takes over, which you are taken out of your logical thinking mind when your emotions are heavily charged, right? And that can be through any level of passion, but talking specifically about anger here. So what can happen is that's when the door is open for beings to take possession of you. That's why when people do these rituals and such, they're always trying to raise up emotions and get you in these high states, because they're trying to bypass your logical mind. They're telling you to bypass your logical mind in order to get in order for there to even be visitation in your body, or to program the subconscious mind. That's the other part. You know, we talk about manifesting and things like that. You can program the subconscious mind like that, but you also open yourself up to entities. And we don't ever want to open ourselves up to low entities. And when you're vibrating on a negative, whether it's a powerful energy like anger is a negative energy, but it's a powerful negative energy, and it can conjure up some powerful negative beings, and you can find yourself surrounded by negative beings as to creating circumstances in your life, and you wonder, why is this always happening to me, or why is that always happening to me? Well, you may be walking with some negative beings, or they may be walking with you, because you're always a moment away from anger, and so they know they got a feeding source. They can jump into you and have bodily experiences. They were cursed. Those entities were cursed from having bodily experiences. The document says, the scripture says, they were cursed. And were not able to have being experiences. So they utilize those different times when human beings are out of their minds to jump in them and then have those experiences. If you're drinking, getting drunk all the time, you know, getting high, those are opportunities for them to jump into you and have bodily experiences, okay? So we want to guard ourselves against that, all right? Guard ourselves against lowness and evilness and negative emotions, and especially anger, all right? I'm going to talk about strategies in the next video or the video after that. But that's it for now. Guard against that evil. And remember, we're always staying beautiful. Beautiful inside and out. And part of your beauty is your light. Your light. And rolling with beings of light, not beings of darkness that cause you to do dark things and take away from your beauty inside and out. All right? That's it for now. I'll see you in the next one. All right? You be well until next time.